moves us on to the next bill, which is sponsored by Chairman McNamara. It's an act related to motor and other vehicles. It passing use of lanes and rules of the road. It provides for specific fines and sanctions to operators of motor vehicles who fail to exercise due care to avoid colliding with vulnerable road users, causing injury, serious injury, or death to the vulnerable road user. Chairman McNamara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I introduced this bill last year. I'm introducing it again on behalf of the Rhode Island Bicycle Coalition. As an avid bike rider for the past, most of my life, I have noticed an increase in individuals that will drive very close and almost brush you, and across the state, including Representative McEntee's district, down in Narragansett, all over the state. It could be, Mr. Chairman, that I often ride with a vest that says Representative McNamara on it. Maybe they're aiming for me now. I don't know. But I believe that the Rhode Island Bicycle Coalition has really indicated a major problem with vulnerable road users, and I would defer to them. They have written a comprehensive explanation of this bill, including the enhanced penalty provisions. But when you injure someone when they're riding a bike or in a wheelchair, there should be serious repercussions if you are at fault for injury and death. And that's what this addresses. So, Mr. Chairman, have they signed up to testify on this?
Yes, Kathleen Gannon?
Yes. So I would defer questions. They have championed this. There's no pride in authorship on my behalf other than I believe it's greatly needed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. Any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, did I miss somebody? Okay. Speak out if I've missed you. Kathleen Gannon.
Jason, Mr. Knight, Representative Knight has a question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Chairman. Nice to see you both. So I just wanted to, I support this bill. I remember when we heard it last year. I just wanted to just point out a couple of things, maybe for council as they're taking notes. As I crawl through it, the bill provides for a penalty for hitting a vulnerable road user, and I don't know what kind of penalty that is. Is it civil? Is it criminal? We should hash that out. Mm-hmm. And if it is going to be criminal, I think we should put a standard of conduct on it, because right now it says someone who fails to exercise due care, which, in a court of law in front of a jury, I mean, that's at bottom, that's negligence. We generally don't criminalize negligence in the state of Rhode Island. So if we wanted to make this a criminal penalty, then we could add recklessly. We ought to think about how we're going to do that, because I think that in the public defender's testimony on this bill, they point out that it could run afoul of Cunningham versus California, which is a 2007 United States Supreme Court case. So we'll have to, I agree with where we're trying to go. I think we have to tweak it a little bit to fit it into our current system. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the sponsor and chairman? If I don't see you, just please say something by unmuting and I'll recognize you. All right, seeing none, we have only one witness, so...
Chairman, Representative Batista has a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to echo Representative Knight's points with one small caveat on my behalf anyway. I would hope that, I'm mindful of the various pieces of testimony we got in favor of this bill. There seems to be many folks who approve it. It seems like a good idea. I would be weary of, I definitely believe we could clarify what this is, as Representative Mike points out. I personally would be weary about making it criminal conduct for two reasons. Number one, I think we live in a hyper criminal system as it is, and I'm worried about adding any more criminality. And number two, and I believe this was in Mr. DeLauro's testimony as well, there already is a criminal penalty for something like that, right? If you have reckless driving is a crime, reckless driving resulting in an injury, resulting in death, those things are already crimes. And so to the extent that we want to be more specific or maybe add a civil penalty, I can appreciate the point of the disparity between, the injury that a pedestrian will suffer and, some sort of fine for the driver and how off balance. I would personally be wary of putting this into the criminal category. I think we already have it.
Any further questions of the sponsor by any member? Dave, please.
Well, not necessarily the question of the sponsor, just a comment on the legislation. We had the same conversation last year with this same bill, but the language "do care." I mean, it's vague. I mean, if you're looking at prosecuting somebody for a crime on something and you're trying to define what is due care, I mean, I think there's a better way to go about this than the language that's being used currently. And until that language is clarified, I think I'd be hard pressed to support legislation that's going to criminalize something with something as so vague as due care. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions of the sponsor? Again, I'll ask anybody, I don't have all of your pictures in front of me, so if you would speak unmuted, then I would know if you have a question. Okay,
Chairman.
I'll presume I've
Chairman, I got one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Chairman, I have a
Thank you,
statement rather than a question.
Chairman McNamara. Someone else wanted to speak?
Chairman, Representative Noret.
Okay,
So it's more of a statement than a question. So we're talking about some of the violations that may occur in this due care that we're not using. So whether it's going around a vehicle, traveling in the breakdown lane, striking someone that's in a crosswalk, so providing right of way in a crosswalk. The general laws of the state of Rhode Island for those violations are motor vehicle code violations, and under general law are $85 for a strike for not providing right of way in a crosswalk, $100 for a subsequent second violation, $85 for traveling in a breakdown lane. So they are very insignificant as far as for the violation that created the act is very insignificant, and I am for the legislation.
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
I just wanted to jump in on Rep. Batista's points as well. We kind of we hashed this out last year, and we'll probably hear it from the witnesses that are coming up. But what was explained to us last year is that reckless driving might not cover this scenario. Basically, we're talking about what happens when a motor vehicle strikes, someone not in a car, right? A vulnerable road user. There may not be recklessness. There may not be some sort of criminal element that we already have on the books these days. But the point, I think, of the legislation is that there should be some kind of penalty if you hit somebody, right? That's what the road users are asking for. That's what they were asking for in testimony last year. I agree with that, and I just think we have to carve it out what it is. Is it civil? Is it not civil? That kind of thing. Thanks.
Okay, any more questions? I think we got everybody. All right, we have a call-in witness, Kathleen Gannon from the Rhode Island Bicycle Coalition. Roberta, is that teed up, or are we trying to get her now?
They're right on the line, Chairman. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Chairman.
Thank you. Is Kathleen Gannon on the line?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead. You're
Thank
speaking
you.
to the House Judiciary Committee. Proceed
Yes.
with any testimony.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Kathleen Gannon. I'm the board chair for the Rhode Island Bicycle Coalition, and I live in Providence. I'd just like to thank Chair Craven, members of the committee, and especially to Representative McNamara for his leadership on this issue. I'm speaking today in favor of House Bill 5093, the Vulnerable Road User legislation. One reason I support this bill is that it recognizes vulnerable road users as legitimate road users under the law, which they are not currently. By enacting this legislation, Rhode Island will explicitly codify rights for people outside their cars to use the public way, and that's a very important point. In addition, I'm in favor of the bill because drivers who operate vehicles unsafely and cause someone's injury or death should be punished. It's a simple matter. Unsafe behavior is worthy of punishment. Injury and death are appropriate, aggravating circumstances. Those capable of more harm, i.e. people who are driving cars, rightfully bear the greater responsibility in these kinds of situations. And victims of reckless drivers deserve some justice. This bill really is a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, there's an epidemic of people dying on the roadway. Nationally, vulnerable road users are being injured and killed at an alarming rate. Even as vehicle miles traveled fell during the pandemic, 2020 crash rates and injury and death rates are increased substantially. 2 bicyclists died in Rhode Island last year, and many pedestrians were hurt and killed. So, finally, just please note that this bill doesn't really ask for anything more than is required in other areas of the law, that penalties are equivalent to penalties a reckless driver faces for other types of offenses. And as you noted, I spoke before you last year on this very same issue and this very same legislation. Since then, so many things have changed, but I just want to highlight 2. Firstly, many more people are choosing active transportation during this COVID pandemic. There's been a huge increase in biking, as you may have noticed yourself, in particular, including biking amongst families and children. That means there's just many more vulnerable road users to be concerned about. Secondly, the statewide long-range transportation plan was formally adopted recently, and one component of the transportation plan is the bicycle mobility plan, which explicitly calls for vulnerable road users legislation just such as this. This legislation was important last year. It's even more relevant and important now, and these protections are long overdue. I urge you to join me in support of House Bill 5093. In doing so, you can send a powerful signal that every individual life is important and worth protecting, whether they're in or out of a car. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions for Kathleen Gannon, please, from the committee? Again, I can't see you all, so if somebody wishes to just speak up.
Chairman, Representative Place.
Dave, go ahead.
Thank you. I think, Mrs. Gannon, I'm sorry, they don't have your name up on the screen, so I apologize. Quick question. You said right now bicyclists aren't recognized as legitimate users of the road. Was that your statement, or did I hear that wrong? Can the witness still hear me, or is she gone?
I don't know, Dave.
It appears that she hung up, but we're getting her back on the phone.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I mean, if we can't get her back on, I guess it's more to the point. Isn't there some way I would assume that
Hello?
Oh, Ms. Gannon.
Yes, I'm back. Yes, I'm back. I don't know what happened. Somehow it got disconnected.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that the question is about whether vulnerable road users are.
You had made a statement they're not recognized as legitimate users of the road or something like that. I just wanted to clarify that comment.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm
So
listening. It's on delay a little bit, but yes, the statement that vulnerable road users are not recognized as legitimate users of the road. We're often told to get off the road and get on the sidewalk where we belong and those kinds of things, harassed by the general public, and sometimes even by police officers telling us incorrectly that we don't belong there. So yeah, that's part of the legislation, is to recognize that everyone has a right to be on the road.
Now, would that go along with, say, just treating you different than any other road users? Like I said, like a car. So if there's an incident with another car or something like that, and someone is at fault in some way, shape, or form, and can be proved to be at fault, that we could just recognize you as being on par with any other user of the road?
Well, I mean, we want to be recognized as legitimate users of the road. You know, I'm not an attorney. I don't know how this shakes out exactly in parsing the language, but and so we want to be recognized as users of the road. And then if we're injured or killed, there's got to be some kind of penalty for that. That's how we feel about it. And by the way, let me just point out too that we're not really just talking about bicyclists and pedestrians. We're talking about police officers at a traffic stop. We're talking about EMT workers who are, you know, attending to someone who's been hurt. We're talking about construction workers who are often in the road. So we're talking about a whole class of people, not just people on bikes and walking.
Were you involved in authoring the legislation at all?
Involved in it?
Yes, in writing it?
It actually was written by, modeled after some model legislation put out by the League of American Voters, but before I actually was the chair of the Rhode Island Bicycle Commission, because we've been offering this legislation in various forms for several years.
Would you by any chance be able to get some better information on what they meant by due care? Because I'm still wrapping my brain around it, just as a layperson. I'm not an attorney, so
Right.
I try to stay out of courtrooms, and I don't want to be in a position to put somebody in a position where we're trying to figure out what this term due care is. And if you could provide some more information on that, it would go a long way to helping me make a decision on this legislation.
I think we can. I think we had this conversation last year, and I believe some of the attorneys in the room said that those were similar. That was similar language to what some other statutes that are already on the books. But we can dig around and find something for you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions of the witness by members of the committee? Again, feel free to just speak out. All right, seeing none, that would conclude testimony on House Bill 5093, sponsored by Chairman McNamara.